Sometimes what we need the most is to take a little time for ourselves. It's not easy. It feels selfish, and this is as good time as any to tell you that the word selfish is misused a lot. What it really should mean is when you are doing something for yourself, and it is important to do that. You need to eat for yourself. You need to sleep for yourself. You need to hydrate. Time is an important thing. Clearing your head is an important thing. Meaning, it's good in this instance to be this kind of selfish, and I think it's worth considering. I'm going to tell you a little confession that some of you know and some of you who are new will not know, which is that, well, first off, I've dealt with clinical depression, a minor case of major clinical depression, my shrink like to call it. I've dealt with clinical depression for decades now, longer than some of you have been alive. And on top of clinical, which is just chemical depression, it's like you can't help it. It's not like a mindset kind of a thing. It just is a physical thing. On top of that, I've dealt with seasonal depression for 20 something years. Pretty much ever since my grandmother passed away and the holidays really changed, and, more and more relatives passed, and there was whatever. So a lot of things. So the holidays are even harder for me. So for 20 plus years, I've dealt with some pretty steep depression, starting at U.S. Thanksgiving and going through Christmas. And then usually I kind of get back to things on the first. But this year was one of my best years ever. And I think I can thank photography at least a little bit for some of it. I have a fairly demanding job, and I'm on call for work a lot of the time. Off hours, there's no such thing. So that's fine. I'm not complaining. It just is what it is. I also get a lot of anxiety around the holidays about hosting or visiting, or maybe I'm not going to be thoughtful enough, or, there's so many things you could fill into your brain, and it's hard. You don't necessarily find a lot of comfort if you are an anxiety-prone person as well as depression. Well, that's the fun thing, by the way, of clinical depression, is you get a free side order of anxiety with every depression. So I'm anxious. So what did I do? How did I get out there? What did I use to calm myself? And how did I find some time for me? My favorite time to go out and shoot photos is during the time called the golden hours. That's the 1 hour right after sunrise, and then the 1 hour right before sunset. But because this is one of those days where I know I'm going to have a lot to do, I knew I had to do the sunrise one. So sunrise was around 7 a.m., so not that bad. In summertime, it's a little harder. And I went out and I went down to the river, and I decided to look around and see what I could see. And in the meditative sense of this, what I was doing was I was paying attention to what moods were in me, what I wanted to think about. And what I got was stillness. I got the crackling of the river. I got the feeling of all these birds that were down there. And I got this experience of listening to the ice make noises, and it was so quiet because everybody's out being with their families and things like that. So I had the world to myself for a little bit. And so I took advantage of that. I made that the storyline. So in these pictures, what you see is that I'm looking for ways that I can use what's there. I saw these ducks, so I decided to come take a snap. But then they got pretty upset with me and they decided they needed to get out. So I shot their departure as well. And then there were some seagulls that were hoping that I was there to feed them. Sorry, seagulls, I didn't have any food for you. But I gave them something to look at. And then in the process, I realized that there was just these beautiful ice flows. There was the sun was just coming down so hard on this particular pile of brush, this grass. It just looked like it was on fire. So it was kind of like fire and ice. What's not to love about that? I've been talking a lot about these vintage lenses. I had this guy out with me, which is this guy is a 50 millimeter. It goes really, really well and covers beautiful, beautiful, blurry backgrounds, bokeh kind of backgrounds. And so I did these berries that way. And then I finished up my little walk in a whole different part of town, shooting this little bench because I thought it'd be a nice place to stop and have a moment. So it's an opportunity when I do these things to meditate, because what I start thinking about is I think of my gratitudes. I think of the things I'm lucky about, the fact that I'm mobile and I can move. I think about the fact that I can be creative. I think that I know that I'm loved. So I think about people who I love and people who love me. And I think about all the different ways that I get to communicate with you. And that makes me happy every time. So it's another thing I do is I try really hard to bring to these moments all the good things, and that I'm having such a good, easy experience with that this year. It's been a beautiful year for it, and so it wasn't that hard. Finally, one little detail that I want to give to you is that in the whole process of all this work that I do and to try to meditate and all that, the end result photos aren't necessarily the thing. But boy, I feel such reward in kind of growing my skills every time I go out. It's all about, did I do a little bit better? Did I catch something a little different? Did I fix some technical challenge that I had in the past that I didn't even know about? And so each time I find something, I throw away my bad photos. I don't know, maybe I should keep them. In my mistakes, I give myself forgiveness. And that's important too. It is so important. So I also work to give myself forgiveness at every turn. So there's a lot of that going on. So gratitude on one side, forgiveness on the other, and then sometimes just being there. I'll never forget the sound of the ice and how it was just moving and alive and just doing its thing. And it was a little ominous, but also just soothing in a strange way. I guess I've lived next to the water for my whole life, so in a lot of ways, it just drew me back in. And it made me think back on the year. It made me think back on some of the other places I've been, the photos I've taken, the opportunities I've had, the people I get to have surrounding me. I'm just very grateful. I have such a great opportunity, and I have you. I have you, and you and I can connect anytime. Thank you for being part of it. Remember, you can always drop me an email, chris@chrisbrogan.com. I'm always happy to talk with you.